Okay. We are live. Woo! The live button was not working, so I got a little worried about it. Okay. So today I'm excited. I think this is a good topic to talk about. Originally, we kind of talked about something else happening today, but I've gotten 3 or 4 parents right off the top of my head that I could think of that have mentioned that now that they've gone back in person, right? So the kids are usually in the third, fourth, fifth grade, somewhere in there. Now that they've gone back in person, they're seeing some stuff like accidents. Like my kid is potty trained. Why are they having accidents? During the lunch hour break. What's going on? And so I've had conversations with them, and it is direct correlation to being back in person. So I thought this would be a good time. Heather and I are always kind of talking about stress, sensory stress, and social stresses, and all this other stuff. And this is a perfect example of this happening. And Heather and I even mentioned it. We've talked about this before. When these kids go back into person, or face to face, we might see some stuff happen, some behaviors happen. So I figured this would be a good topic to talk about. So yes, kids are having accidents, and kids are behaving like they weren't behaving last year when they had more, or they weren't as face to face. And so we're seeing a lot of this right now. Heather, are you seeing anything like this? In your centers? I know you've seen it in the past, but are you seeing any of this currently going on?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, back to school is always a transition, whether you have kids who sail through school or not. I mean, it's new teachers, new routine, new expectations each year. And after a year of virtual hybrid programs, school is closed, it's open, there's masks, there's all these things. And now they're supposed to have some feeling of a new version of normalcy. There's even more to process and more to think. It's a bigger transition this year for everyone. Absolutely. And that is going to impact emotions and behaviors.
100%. And, look, there's a lot of fear going on, right? There's still talks of, Delta variants, and there's confusion over masks, and, relatives are getting sick and family members are getting sick. So there's a lot of fear too. And so I have some kids that don't even want to go back to person. They're back to face because they do have some reservations, right, about that. They have some fears. And so, there's fear, there's new teachers, there's different environments, there's all of this going on. And so behavior, right, is what do we say? It's communication.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, right. It's communication. So these kiddos are communicating something. So we need to help them kind of decipher that. But I know the kiddos that I am currently working with that we were seeing some of these struggles with, there's retained primitive reflexes, and there's very poor body awareness, very poor. And so actually I had a mom call me up, and she said, we were okay. He just started, by the way. So he just started, but he was like, we were okay. And we saw this at the beginning of last year. Then summertime came, and, we didn't have this. And then we're back in person again, and we're seeing it happen 2 or 3 times a week. And so body awareness, that plays a massive role, right, in your ability to sense sensations. And so the interesting thing is the mom said, hey, you know what? He told me he didn't know he had to go.
Yes.
So, real interesting.
When we did some shows a few months ago, we really talked about the fight or flight response specifically, and the sympathetic and the parasympathetic response, to understand the body-brain connection, and that our emotional state, whether we're anxious or fearful, etc., impacts our bodily functions, because that is our nervous system.
Yes.
And we have not only the 5 senses that are external, the 5 that you learn in pre-K that we take in from the environment and process, we also have internal sensations of urinary urgency. When am I thirsty, hungry, full? The signals I get in my body that I'm escalating, which is part of body awareness, that gut feeling or the tension. If I don't feel my body, I don't get those sort of yellow warning signals that let me know I am escalating before the emotion even arrives. And so an emotion can just take over. It went from 0 to 60. And it can take the child off by surprise as well. So it can be very hard for them to use self-regulation strategies before, they're already at a 10. And we take that for granted. Another thing about body awareness specifically is that we know from a lot of research very consistently that when individuals have anxiety, fear, and they're in this state of fight or flight, it doesn't just impact that, especially if their body awareness is low, but sometimes even if it's not, they will misperceive anger or disapproval in their teachers, in their peers or parents that is not there if what that person is conveying to them is anything other than overt happiness and approval. So monotone, boredom, distraction, tiredness could all be that person doesn't like me, that teacher's out to get me. And especially if you miss big picture skills, you don't have a way of looking at it from a different vantage point. And so a lot of the social emotional development that doesn't happen, it all starts with body awareness and reading nonverbal cues correctly, knowing how you're coming off to someone else, personal space. A lot of kids would have been space invaders, but it's been drilled into them about social distancing. So now they don't know really what is an appropriate space. You don't know where am I in space, and now there's the 6 foot thing.
Yeah.
And they're missing so much information from the masks. And if your pupils dilate and you're feeling frustrated, even if you're staying calm, they're going to think you're mad because you can't control the pupil dilation. I don't feel my body, so it's harder for me to sit still in class. So I'm going to get up and run around because every stomp on the ground helps me feel my body. Kicking a desk leg or something like that. So much of that motion seeking, we've had several that we've assessed recently who have decreased body awareness, but also decreased equilibrium, another part of our internal sensory system. And we spin them and we look for that movement in their eyes, post-rotary nystagmus, that lets us know they're dizzy. Their eyes are perfectly still. They don't even sense the motion. And so they want to hang upside down off of things, run around, twirl, spin, anything, because they're seeking input that they're not naturally getting.
Yes. So big because, I mentioned the accidents, but hyperactivity is the other one that we commonly see, right? That's such a key one. We have these internal senses, the sensation to evacuate our bladder, the internal GPS system that tells us where we are in space, and then the body awareness. And so all these things are communicating. And when we have gaps in there, we see these behavior, bedwetting and attention. Big. They always go together with my kiddos, right? And moving and swinging upside down. One of my favorite stories, always the parents are like, I don't know why my kid loves to hang upside down. They're like, they never get dizzy and they're always upside down. I don't get it. But that's it, right? It's a part of that internal system. And if we don't have that, it plays a role not only in our ability to understand our own feelings, our own emotional states, but others. And so that's why a lot of these kids struggle socially too, right? They may come across as awkward because they don't know how to interpret distance and facial stuff. And what's really bizarre right now, which has been very frustrating from what I'm reading, is there's a lot of people trying to say this doesn't matter, that the masks don't impact social awareness and that it does not impact neural development. And all the research prior to this whole pandemic said the exact opposite, but now they're trying to change it, and it's going to cause a lot of kids to struggle, and they don't need to.
Mm-hmm. And aside from the emotional behavioral types of things, that we say this all the time, we never want to ascribe negative personality or character labels. A lot of kids on the flip side are called lazy, and understand, like, they just, if they want to learn something, they do. If they don't, they don't. We do this test of executive function that Cambridge has. It's an internationally renowned test of executive function. And so often I will see kids just nailing it on all these different memory tasks. But when it is spatial memory, they don't. And then I look at which subjects they're struggling in, and it's things that involve spatial concepts, or that will impact how to use your planner because I don't get where to put this, where it means the thing it's supposed to mean. But a way that I explain that, we learn first in our sensory motor system. We talked about that last week on the visual perception and processing show. Yes. But I will explain to parents, I will say, if I go attend a seminar about financial planning intended for individuals who have their Series 7 or Series 63 license, I'm going to forget a whole lot of that information because I do not have as much background experience to connect it to. If I attend a neuroscientific seminar, I'm going to remember almost all of it because I have a lifetime of experience personally and professionally, so many things to connect it to, and it multiplies my understanding. It's not that my memory is better in one course. It's that I have more things to connect it to. If kids don't know where they are in space, it's going to impact certain subjects more than others. We could apply that to anything. And that is where strengths mask struggles and struggles mask strengths. Oh, sure, they forgot it because they didn't care about it. No, what is different about what that was that they were supposed to remember, and how well they can connect it in context to the bigger picture, so they can generalize that information to other contexts.
That was big. So if if your kid is struggling, look, I have yet to meet a truly lazy kiddo. It's not the case. Sometimes they don't understand things. Sometimes, when I communicate with them, I communicate and I'm testing them, and not like grading them per se, but I'm looking at how they process my information. Can they understand my verbal communication? Do they need me to show them? And so, but you can see where these kids, their brains kind of stop, right? I give them a verbal command and they don't know how to process it, but it may look like they're lazy, like they don't want to do it. But if you don't understand, if I started talking to you in Mandarin and gave you commands, how to fix this IKEA desk, which you could barely fix without without instructions anyways, you're lost. And so I always explain to parents, like, if you maybe took some Spanish in high school, and so maybe you remember a few words. If I started speaking fluid Spanish to you, you may catch that word or a couple words and maybe get an outline of it, but actually understanding my inflections and tones and the way I'm trying to communicate would be very, very difficult. It would slow down how you process it. And if you didn't understand, you just kind of stand there like, I don't know what to do. And that's what these kids are. So many of these kids are like, they literally don't understand. And so I love what you point out. There's no lazy kids out there. It's just figuring out where they're churning, right, or struggling to process that. But going back to kind of the title of this was My Child is Having a Meltdown. A lot of this has to do with, again, that body awareness, not understanding, like Heather said, like the emotion building behind that storm brewing in the nervous system behind and building up and exploding. And we're seeing withdrawals, which we always talk about too. You have to remember that's just the opposite spectrum of an outburst is a withdrawal, right? And so that's a form of communication. We're seeing bedwetting, all of this stuff. And so as we're going through this, start cueing in, because your kid is communicating to you, and it's very, very important stuff.
And something else to know about body awareness, because people often talk about body awareness or proprioception as it relates to reading nonverbal cues and knowing how you're coming across to others. That's very true, but it's more than that. Also, if we go through all of these stages of development that help us grow a sense of self before we develop self-worth. And the initial stages, our little ones are learning about their bodies. They experiment and look at what my fingers and toes do. And if I push a ball this hard, that's what happens. Boom, cool. I have an effect on the things in the environment. But then, and they recognize themselves in pictures and mirrors. If body awareness is depleted, you'll notice that those things often happen later than they're supposed to. And then it can even stall out. If body awareness keeps growing, I realize I'm more than my body. I wear a lot of different hats. And I start thinking about the roles and responsibilities I have as a son or daughter, as a friend, as a student, et cetera, in this hobby or extracurricular. And then I realize I'm more than that. I am my heart, my soul, my core, my values, my beliefs. This task is difficult, but I have a growth mindset. I know I'm just not quite there yet. And this fits into bigger goals, so I'm going to do it anyway. So when body awareness stalls out, kids don't grow into that self-worth. And that's where that rejection sensitivity dysphoria comes in that you've heard me talk about before. I am what I do, or I am who people say I am. So if someone does not have your child's best interest at heart, they will just take somebody's words at face value, or I made a mistake, so I'm a bad person. So why even try? I didn't do well on this test. They don't recognize that as feedback. I'm stupid. I can't do it. And so when kids have rejection sensitivity, you might feel like you're walking on eggshells. You take things wrong. Even as an adult, if your spouse says, honey, did you empty the dishwasher? I know you've had so much on your plate, and you asked me, we have guests coming over tonight. You're just reminding them and trying to be supportive, and they might hear, I think you're irresponsible. You never do what I think you're going to do. And that would be an adult version of rejection sensitivity. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And so often you'll see opting out. If I let you know how much I care about this and I fall short, then I am a failure, because I'm a human doing, not a human being. If I feign apathy and don't do well, that's why I didn't do well. If I'd really cared, I would have done better. It's a a maladaptive way to try to preserve self-esteem. And then if I act apathetic long enough, guess what happens? By the time they're tweens and teens, they actually start feeling apathetic, or they tried for so many years and they give up. Flip side of that is they might be perfectionistic. I'm not good enough just who I am in here. So I'm going to earn approval by doing this thing the best. I'm going to be a people pleaser. I'm going to be a chameleon. You're into that? Me too. Jump. How high? And kids can start getting taken advantage of. Yeah. And can make some real, peer pressure as they get older that can be scary and lead to some risky behaviors. So there's a lot of rage, even suicidal ideation that can be associated with this if we don't catch it early. And where does it start? Primitive reflexes in the sensory motor system.
Yes, that's where it all starts, right? That's how we learn. I had this proud dad moment, and as somebody who works with a lot of kids, I try not to overanalyze, my own kids, right? But my son was watching a movie, and he said there's some sort of line, and he said, "Dad, in their tomorrow," and what he meant was in the movie their tomorrow something was going to happen. He realized that the movie was in a different space and time frame from where he was, and I was like, how cool was that? So but if you don't have that body awareness, that can be a real struggle for kids. And so they don't always understand that movies and other things, that they're separate. And so although it was really neat for me to see that my own kiddo, and I was super proud, there are kiddos out there who don't have enough body awareness to understand the separation of space and time. And so those are kids that often struggle. This weekend we're going to go somewhere, and they don't understand how space and time work, and that there are different things going on. And they will be like, those are the kids like, when are we going here? When are we going here? And don't get me wrong, my kids do the same thing, but they don't understand that 2 weeks from now is a giant space of time. It's several 2 weeks, several days, and that there's this continuation that we need to go through to get there. And so the reason I bring that up is body awareness, reflexes are so important and oftentimes so overlooked in these kiddos. And unfortunately, medications are often the first solution. When if we work on the neurology, these kids do so amazing. I mean, so amazing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because so often people think about sensory processing as being, is what I'm taking in auditorily accurate? Am I missing? And you might hear of modulation, like kids covering their ears or squinting their eyes, like they're taking in too much or too little. We think about the kids who are taking in too much because they have these overt signs like this or breaking eye contact. But sometimes they're undermodulated, and you think it looks like they're ignoring, when really I am not sensitive enough to the auditory signal, didn't even realize you were talking. And that could be assumed to be attention when it's not. But then we have sensory motor planning. That is the third major branch of the types of sensory processing that we have. And to Brian's point, a sense of time. We think about time management, organization, prioritizing, task initiation as being when kids get to a certain stage or age, and they're expected to do some things independently. But those skills start growing, and our internal clock starts growing in infancy. It is not like we don't have it and suddenly, okay, you're in 4th or 5th grade, it's time to get ready for middle school. No. And one of the things that helps alleviate anxiety is when I have an internal clock. When Brian, Brittany, and I are going to meet in an hour for queso, I know what an hour feels like. They know what an hour feels like, and we can predict our world. How many things can I wrap up here? What time do I need to leave to get there on time so it's not stressful? And transitions aren't hard. Sometimes, there are all these tips and tricks that teachers will do and parents that are said to some, and they can work, but not always. Okay, this is your 3-minute warning before we switch and go to circle time. This is your 2-minute warning. You're speaking Mandarin right then. What does that mean? So it still feels sudden when it happens. And not to mention all the visual and auditory fray. And I just got grounded here, and now I have to make sense of all this other stuff. So it can lead to difficulty with transitions. It can be kids who are not okay at all when that routine gets switched up during a particular day because something happens so the norm doesn't happen. I don't have an internal clock. I rely on the fact that we do this at 4 o'clock, this at 5, this at 6, because I know what comes next, because I can't figure it out on my own. So lots of things with inflexibility and curveballs being thrown and transitions and anxiety that go in with time. But if I can keep time, if I can clap to do so many rhythm games, drum out a beat, have them do one back to you. This also grows literacy, by the way. It grows language skills because I hear pauses and periods and intonation patterns and which word was stressed that gives so much more meaning. It helps me sound out words, L, left, fent, but it also grows internal clock.
I love that. Everything. That was amazing. Yes. All of that. And so there was a lot there, a lot of hidden gems. So go back, watch those 2 minutes, because a lot of that was so important to understand, right? There was something you said that I really wanted to highlight, but look, behavior, again, I just want to emphasize this: behavior is communication. And so we see labels, inattention, laziness, meltdowns, emotional dysregulation, all this stuff. But really, when you drill down to it, it's a neurological concern. There's neurology involved that we need to look at, and we need to make sure that it's functioning properly. And until you reach that, until you dig and find out what's going on, which Heather and I always do, right? We find it, like parents will tell us, this is going on. And in my mind, I'm already thinking, okay, this, I'll probably find this. I'll probably find this. Not that I'm saying it has to be there or that there can't be other things going on, but, I'm already kind of working through that problem when they're telling this to me over the phone. I'm thinking, okay, I think I know what's going on with this kid. Let's test and confirm it. And I tell you what, 97% of the time, I am dead on with the neurological findings. And that's just because of all the work we do, because we see these kids over and over, and we see the churns that these kids are going through. And so I say that all to say, look, I don't want to see any kids struggle. I want to help these kids. We know kids that are on medications for long periods of time. There's depression that can kick in, different chemical and alcoholic abuse that can kick in, right? We become overly dependent sometimes on these things. And so, we're here to serve you. And so I love what Heather said, because that was so amazing. We can find these things. We can do it. And so, look, if your kid's having meltdowns, if they're having accidents, talk to us. We're here for you. So I wanted to highlight that, because I know I really care about these kids, and I don't want to see any of these kids struggle. And I'm always sad when I get a phone call and there's a kid struggling. I'm just like, oh man, but I'm here to help too. So there's that too. But I just hate to see them struggle, because they're awesome kids.
They are. I love the way Dr. Ross Greene, professor at Harvard, he's a bestseller. Every book he writes, I've never read anything from him, article wise or book wise, that is not so spot on. I'm sure a professor at Harvard is glad to know I approve. But he says, your kids are not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time.
Ooh,
that so succinctly talks about how behavior is communication, and we don't need to focus on the symptom. We need to figure out why it is happening so that we can take care of those foundational causes. And it is something I say all the time. This is one of my life mottos. It is not just about, can my child do XYZ, fill in the blank with whatever it is. How hard are they churning to do it? To do it, are they working this hard? Or is it automation mode the way it's supposed to be? All of us on the planet have a certain cognitive capacity. This is how much I can take. And when I get up to here, that is the tipping point. When handwriting is automatic, requires so much sensory motor processing, when reading, when math, whatever, the more automatic things are, the needle does not move on how overwhelmed I feel. But when I'm churning on things that I'm not supposed to churn on, I have this much space left to give that bump in the road. I have this much attention left to give. I have this much tolerance for my little sister who's driving me crazy before I'm up to here. And that's where you see the emotions and behaviors. What can we do to keep that needle from moving on the things it's not supposed to move on? It's the difference between being a veteran driver, where you can handle the world's problems, plan dinner, answer a phone call, break up an argument with your kids, and you still navigate traffic very smoothly. The needle doesn't move on the driving process, so you have the capacity to do those other things. A new driver might be white knuckling it, and they have to think blinker up or down. Oops, where's my blind spot? When do I use which mirror? They give you whiplash with the gas pedal, brake pedal. They have to put effort, physical, mental, emotional effort into the act of driving, and they're not going to be able to answer their phone, all the other things. That is what it is like for our kids, who they may get straight A's. They may get A's and B's. Doesn't mean they're not churning. Doesn't mean things are automated. It so often comes out emotionally and behaviorally and not on the grade.
Yeah. So the reason I laugh, and it's from my own personal experience of learning to drive, was the fact that I remember my very first drive. So I grew up in a small town, 2,000 people. So, when we went out on my first drive, we were, Highway 59. Remember the highway? There's not a lot of traffic. Okay. We're going to my aunt and uncle's house, and they live in an even smaller town. So there's no traffic. But I come up to my first major turn, and I didn't know when to slow down or hit the brakes. And we just barely made it into without hitting the ditch. And the fear on my mom's face was legitimate and real. But it speaks to the efficiency of me knowing distance and time and what pressure I need to apply and how I need to turn the wheel. And, now that turn would be nothing for me. It's all very automated, right? I can be talking to my kiddos, have the blinker on, slow down, and make a very nice, smooth turn. But if I drove every time like that, eventually I would end up in a ditch, right? And so it's like with these kids, right? Every day, that memory makes me laugh now. But that's what it's like. They're driving for their first few times, and it's a wild ride. And so it's just interesting, when you put it in perspective of a real life scenario where you understand it, like that connection, it really speaks to what they're going through. We got a comment here. Oh, great question.
That's a great question, Clark. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to role play. I mean, it could be something like you get every human being does something that might be embarrassing sometimes, and so you could even role play, and this can make it fun. And when you get laughter going and you take down the defenses, and even mom or dad can pretend like they trip over something and the kids are laughing. What could I say when, kid, what do you think kids are going to say to me? And they could do that, and then they could come up with responses to that. It could be anything, needing to ask the teacher for help, or what to do if you are being bullied or you witness someone being bullied. But it's fun to act it out, because that gives additional, it gets laughter, and it kind of takes down. You're always going to talk more to the logical brain of kids when it is hypothetical, when they are not emotionally involved in a situation. Now you're talking to the logical brain, not the emotional brain. So role playing is one of the best things. It's great to play emotions, musical chairs. And I've done this even with teenagers, and they think it's fun. And again, acting out, and not to mention that the movement involved in when you're acting things out is releasing the right chemicals in the brain that get the reward centers going. But whatever chair they stop on, they act out that emotion and talk about something that has made them feel that way. There's so many games you can do. Having posters where they learn that there are stages between 0, everything's cool, and I'm about to blow up, about to pop my top. And here are strategies, and give them strategies to try. And if they have the body awareness and the social emotional awareness, let them pick the ones that work best for them. If they don't, you pick those. And the ones work best, be sure to talk to teachers about those. Social emotional books are fantastic. Another thing I really like is we always talk about having open communication every day. You could even think of it, okay, what is your rose, what is your thorn, and what is your bud for the day? And so the rose that's something beautiful, something you're grateful for. This could be at the beginning of the day, breakfast. In my idealistic world, when people sit down for breakfast in the morning, not rushing in the morning is a big deal to set up the day, because if kids are frenetic and rushing to get out the door, and you haven't kind of planned the night before, they're going to hit the doors of the school already sweating and anxious. But the rose is something that you're excited about and that you're looking forward to that day, or at the end of the day, something that happened that you're so excited about. the thorn is something you're struggling with, and I wonder what you could do about that, so you can work on the problem solving. And then the bud is something you're grateful for, or something you're looking forward to. So you're really teaching self-love, gratitude, and growth all at the same time. What are the things that can grow from that bud?
I like that. That's good. I love the role playing. I think that's a great way to do it. That's generally my number one suggestion, just because it seems to work well, and you can ask a lot of open-ended questions and really kind of utilize that to tap in. Plus, they get to, like you said, they get to use the logical part of the brain, which detach the emotional part, and that seems to really help a lot of the kids I work with. So I love that. That's a great suggestion as well.
Yeah. As far as impulsivity, always, red light, green light, Simon Says, because they have to wait to hear if Simon says it before they do it. Anything, playing with cars and talking about the different speeds, like have one car going really, really fast and talk about, that's when I'm rushing through my work. Then you have the car that's the medium speed, and then one that's sitting in park, and talk about, it gives something tangible to talk about, what speed are you at right now? This is another thing that makes an abstract concept concrete, where they don't want to be the race car speeding too fast. They want to be that one in the middle. They don't want to sit in park and be withdrawing or not, task initiating. But what are the emotions that go along with that? That it's ways to make things tangible. And when we do those social emotional books, it's so important to do dialogic reading. So have dialogue about the book as you go. Wow, I wonder how Susan felt when that happened. Have you ever faced something like that? How would you feel? What do you think about how she handled it? Why? What would you do differently? It really gets kids opening up, because again, they're in their logical mind. This story isn't about them, but it's something very relatable to them. And always parents sharing similar stories of things they've been through, that as long as they're, with discretion, they're appropriate for the kids to hear. Mm-hmm. And always giving, if they say, I'm so mad, if they have very limited emotions vocabulary, say, we never tell them they're not feeling the word that they say they're feeling, but it might be that that's the only word they know for it. If I only know the word mad, I don't know that there's a possibility that it's mild frustration or disappointment, and it's not actual infuriation. So, you know what? I faced something like that one time. And at the time I thought, I am so anxious. But then I learned that there's also a word called uncertainty. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I started thinking about what I could do to learn more about this before I faced it. And I realized I was uncertainty. I wasn't actually anxious. So we're empathizing. That's really tough when you feel that way. And I'm so proud of you for trying new things. But it introduced to them 3 other words that the emotion might be. We know with certainty that when kids have multiple emotions words that go with the rainbow, the range, the grades, the shades, degrees of emotions that we experience, once I cognitively know that, I start experiencing them on a level more in keeping with what actually happened, so that it's not a scenario that's really a 3 on a scale of 0 to 10, and I was acting like it was an 8. So that's important too.
Yes, all of that. I've been listening to the book Thinking in Pictures, and it's an adult with autism, but she talks about a couple key things I just want to touch on. But she actually built herself a compression machine, so that it actually compressed her. Compressed her. And she said, one thing she said was, I never would have understood that others had emotions if I didn't have a sense of my own body, which I was like, and then the second thing she said is the limit of what she understood for emotion was happiness and anger.
Yeah.
That was the full breadth and depth of her emotion. Those are the 2 states that she understood. She said she could visually understand that might not be somebody's emotion. Like, she's like, that's not happiness and that's not anger, but she didn't know how to identify with it. Yeah. And I thought that was absolutely just a neat perspective to hear from her world. But it just kind of goes into that whole, what we talked about, right? Like asking them questions and digging a little deeper. And they may only know 2 words, right, for emotional state, but you can offer in other words and play with that and help them understand that there are other emotions out there. But her world, for the first, couple decades, she really only understood 2 emotional states. So,
yeah, it's powerful. It's weird to think about, but it's just like, I didn't tell my parents I was blind because I didn't know what sight was. If we only know mad and sad, those are the only emotions. That's how we experience life. So emotional granularity is paramount.
So the reason part of the reason I bring that up is if they keep using the same word, that sad, or there's a key word that they key in on, and they keep repeating it for their emotional states. That might be a cue that that's kind of the one one of the emotional states they understand. And they may not understand that there's a spectrum in there of different emotional states. And gray, she actually used the word gray. She said it's black and white to me. You're either happy or you're sad. There's no in between. There's no gray. And so they may not understand gray states. That might be foreign idea to them. Just like Heather with what she was talking about. And great podcast last week, by the way. Go back and listen to that. But she didn't know a different state, right? And so it helps if we can talk to them with open-ended questions and communicate. So, sorry, I mentioned that. Thinking in Pictures of the book. It's a great book if you want to take a listen to it. It's really an interesting perspective. It's her perspective, and really kind of a cool book to listen to. But anyways, all right, we are at 35 minutes. So, Heather, anything you want to highlight or mention here before we sign off?
I think this is great. I mean, I love this topic.
Yes, it's a fantastic topic. The big takeaway, as always, is behaviors communication. Behaviors telling you something, and so if you're seeing behaviors, find a clinic or practitioner like ourselves that understands it and can cue you in on what is actually going on, because it's so important. All right, Heather. Somebody wants to find you. Where do they find you?
At The Hidden Churn on Instagram or Facebook, or Brain Balance of the Woodlands, Katy, Mansfield, or South Lake.
All right, plenty of opportunities to find Heather, so she is available. As always, ask questions if you have this, if you listen to this later on. Heather also has another podcast, which is a great one, so you should go back, follow those pages, because they're on those pages, and that's Monday at 2:00. Do you have one coming up?
I do. It's actually going to be the topic I thought it was going to be last week. It's going to be help for handwriting and written expression, back to those things that are not automated that should be, and how that's going to drain the bucket, what we do to take care of it. This is huge if you're concerned about literacy or behaviors. Maybe there's something that's not automated for them.
Yes, seen a lot of that recently. So go pay attention or go listen to that. That'll be fantastic. As always, Heather has great material. So Monday at 2:00 on those pages, go follow that. Those pages. If you need to get a hold of me, Dallas Synergy Chiropractic, both on Facebook and Instagram, or you can call 972-387-4700. All right, we're excited to be back with you again next Thursday. It should be at the 3:35 time next week. We had a little hiccup here this week, so we had to move back an hour, but we will be back next Thursday at our normal time. Assuming technology doesn't fail us or something else crazy happens, but we're excited to be with you. And as always, please share this with I think I'm neurologically fatiguing out right now. Please share this with any families that may benefit from it, because this is for you all. Okay, we love you all. We're trying to serve our communities, and so this is for you. So this could benefit a neighbor, coworker, whoever it may be. Please share this with them. Otherwise, we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.